we have some incredible breaking news for you.
For nearly 5,000 years, something stayed sealed behind a slab of stone on Ireland's northern coast. No one knew what was on the other side. No one even knew the stone could move. Then, during a routine survey last autumn, it happened. The door opened. What came out afterward was recorded, quietly investigated, and then just as quietly shut down. The man at the center of this story isn't a scientist. He's a 29-year-old electrician from Belfast who flies a drone as a hobby, chasing coastal sunsets for his social media page. Last autumn, on a clear evening along Antrim's basalt coastline, he set his drone out over the cliffs the same way he had dozens of times before. Get a few minutes of clean footage, pick the best frame, head home before the light faded completely. This particular stretch of coast is one of the most photographed in Ireland, a place where interlocking hexagonal basalt columns rise out of the sea in formations so geometrically precise that for centuries, locals attributed them to a legendary giant, rather than the slow-cooling lava flow that geologists say actually created them 60 million years ago. It's a beautiful, well-documented, endlessly surveyed stretch of rock. Nobody expects it to surprise anyone anymore. What the footage caught wasn't a sunset. A section of the cliff face, a slab roughly the size of a delivery van, moved, not crumbling, not sliding, pivoting outward, slow and even, like a door swinging on a hinge. Behind it, nothing but darkness. 11 seconds later, the stone returned to its original position with no visible seam, no crack, no trace that it had ever moved at all. He rewatched the footage more times than he could count before posting it, half convinced his drone had glitched or the evening light was playing tricks on the sensor. By morning, geologists and local researchers were already calling, all asking the same question. Was this real, or the most convincing fake any of them had ever seen? One of them drove out to the cliff the next day with equipment that would change the shape of this entire story. Dr. Aoife Kinsella, a geologist who has spent over a decade studying the Antrim basalt formations for a regional coastal research institute, was skeptical going in. She'd scanned that stretch of coastline more times than she could count over the years, and every single time the result was the same. Solid rock, no anomalies, nothing unusual. When colleagues first forwarded her the clip, she assumed it was a lighting artifact or a well-made hoax, and nearly didn't bother watching a second time. This time was different. She set up her ground-penetrating radar at the coordinates from the drone footage, calibrated the sensors against a gusting Atlantic wind, aimed the antenna at the cliff face, and began the scan. According to her field assistant, she didn't speak for almost 2 full minutes. He initially thought the equipment had frozen, since she wasn't adjusting any settings or taking notes, simply staring at the display. The radar had picked up a hollow chamber sealed inside what should have been uninterrupted volcanic basalt, roughly 12 feet deep, 26 feet wide, with no visible entrance or exit that any prior survey had ever detected. That alone broke every assumption anyone had ever made about that coastline. Basalt, unlike sedimentary rock, doesn't form gradually around existing voids or objects. It cools from a single molten mass. A hollow chamber inside it shouldn't exist at all, let alone one nobody had found in decades of prior surveys. But the chamber wasn't empty. The scan showed 7 tall shapes standing upright inside it, evenly spaced roughly 4.5 feet apart, all facing the same direction, toward the stone door. If those shapes were genuinely inside the rock and not some artifact of the scanning equipment, whatever they were, they had to have already been standing there when the rock was still molten, tens of millions of years before anything resembling a human being existed anywhere on the planet. A second researcher, a subsurface imaging specialist who has spent decades mapping underground formations for infrastructure and geological survey work, arrived the following day with more advanced equipment. He has examined buried structures across Europe for most of his career, and has, by his own account, never lost his composure on a job site. Not during deep crust surveys, not during underground river mapping, not once in 30 years of work that regularly turns up strange, unexplained formations. 20 minutes into this scan, he had to put his equipment down and step away for a moment. The higher resolution imaging showed the 7 shapes weren't solid. They were hollow, thin outer shells with empty space inside, more like cocoons than statues, made of a material the scan couldn't identify or classify against any known mineral or synthetic reference in his equipment's database. Nothing organic and nothing synthetic that either researcher was aware of could survive contact with molten lava at those temperatures, let alone remain structurally intact for tens of millions of years afterward. Lava, at the temperatures required to form basalt runs well over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And yet there the shells were, undisturbed, inside rock that had been liquid fire, while entire geological eras rose and disappeared above it. Within 48 hours, a regional environmental authority issued a brief statement, calling the footage a trick of light on wet basalt and declaring the site unremarkable, closing the matter before any of the raw scan data had been made public. The lead researcher who reviewed that statement before it went out declined to sign it, and by most accounts walked out of the meeting without further comment. 4 days after the original scan, Dr. Kinsella returned to run a comparison pass, hoping the first reading had simply been an instrument error that a second scan would correct. She has said since that she genuinely wanted to be wrong. She wasn't. One of the 7 figures was gone. 6 remained, arranged almost exactly as before. A motion-activated camera had been recording the cliff face continuously since the day after the drone footage first surfaced. 4 full days, 0 movement detected outside the rock. No tremor, no vibration, no sign the stone door had opened even once during that entire window. And yet, inside a sealed chamber that had shown no external disturbance whatsoever, one of the 7 shapes had simply stopped being there. No debris, no fracture line, no trace of an exit anywhere along the chamber walls. Whatever left that space, it left no physical evidence of how. A thermal imaging specialist, brought in to check for volcanic heat sources or hidden water channels, expected the kind of ordinary geothermal reading she'd recorded dozens of times at sites across Iceland. A warm ring here, a buried water channel there, something explainable within the normal range of coastal geology. Instead, on a freezing March morning with the surrounding rock reading close to outside air temperature, her camera showed the 6 remaining figures radiating heat at roughly 99 degrees Fahrenheit, the internal core temperature of a living human body. She recalibrated her equipment 3 times, swapped instruments, and repeated the scan from different angles. The reading never changed. She reportedly asked her colleagues, half joking, whether someone was running a prank on her, and stopped joking once she saw that none of them were laughing either. Vibration sensors placed along the rock face picked up something else entirely. A steady pulse, repeating every 4 seconds, consistent enough that one member of the research team described it, on record, as indistinguishable from a slow heartbeat. The team compared the pattern against tidal cycles, barometric pressure, and regional seismic activity. None of it lined up. Whatever was generating that rhythm didn't appear to be responding to anything happening outside the rock at all. Every scan conducted in the following weeks showed the same pattern holding steady, and in some readings growing slightly stronger. Scans conducted every few days over the following month showed something the team hadn't expected to see at all. The 6 remaining figures were shifting position. Not dramatically, only a few inches between readings, but consistently, and always in the same direction, toward the sealed stone door. Layered together across a full month of readings, the positional data traced a single, unmistakable trajectory. 6 points, moving steadily, deliberately, toward the exit. They were no longer arranged in the tight original formation. They had drawn closer together, as though converging on a shared destination. Whatever these things are, they had apparently remained motionless for a span of time longer than most of Earth's geological eras combined. And now, during the exact window when a drone happened to catch that door swinging open, they had started moving again, as if something about that 11-second opening had changed the conditions inside the chamber permanently. By spring, all monitoring equipment was removed from the site, and the researchers involved were told, informally, to stay quiet. Officially, warning signs went up, citing coastal erosion risk. Everyone who had reviewed the actual scan data understood that wasn't the real reason, though none of them were willing to say so publicly, on record, under their own name. The question that lingers isn't really about the 6 figures still inside that hillside. It's about the 7th, the one that didn't break through stone, didn't leave a tunnel, didn't leave a single trace, and simply wasn't there anymore. Copies of the original scans, thermal logs, and vibration recordings still exist, held privately by the researchers who collected them, stored well outside the reach of any single agency's request to have them quietly disappear. Whether what's sealed inside that hillside is a geological anomaly nobody can yet explain, an elaborate hoax that has fooled a genuinely skilled set of researchers, or something closer to what the raw data actually seems to show, one fact hasn't changed since that first drone flight last autumn. There were 7. Now there are 6, and by every scan collected so far they are still moving toward the door. Do you think the 7th is still out there somewhere along that coastline? Or has it already found its way somewhere else entirely? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe with notifications on, because the moment new footage from that cliff face surfaces, we'll be the first ones covering it.